Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the annual meeting, the annual May meeting of the Madison Astronomical Society. I am the Society's president, Lawrence Moore, and I would like to thank everyone that's come here tonight. We have, instead of doing our usual announcements first, we have some important annual business to take care of, in that the term of our board of directors is expired as of this month. And this month, according to the bylaws, we need to re-elect a new board of directors. Now, before I call this meeting to order, I would like to confirm with the treasurer and secretary that we do in fact have 15% of the memberships present, with no less than 3 members of the board who are members of the board of directors present.
We have 21 members present.
And we need 26 members of the board.
And only 3 members of the board. But we do have 6 members of the board. So it sounds like I'm going to agree that we do in fact have a quorum, and I would like to call this formal portion of the night's proceedings to order.
We should quickly just announce too that there is a small change of plans. We were planning to vote on the membership change tonight, but we are going to do another general membership meeting in June, because the bylaws say we have to give 30 days notice on the actual verbiage of the change. So we will, you announce that this week.
Yeah, and I also will go through that after we take care of this part of the business.
Just wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page, that we're not going to vote on that tonight, just the board.
So yeah, the part of the proposed agenda for tonight is that first we address the election of the board for the board of directors for the 2024 year, and then second we'll discuss the proposed changes to the bylaws to address what Dan was just talking about. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. What's the time is 7:16. Thank you all for being here. We do in fact have a quorum, and that was it's very important. So to go on, the first item of business, we do have a slate of board of directors that was nominated over a month ago pursuant to the bylaws, and I'm returning as president. We essentially have all of our board of directors returning, as shown here in this slide, except that we have Martin Mika, who's been very busy with his professional and family life lately, is decided to become a member at large, and Dave Leapart, who has put in a lot of work and demonstrated a lot of expertise as far as caring for Yana Research Station, has agreed to take up the position of observatory director. However, Martin's still around to ask high-end geeky questions about telescope equipment and things like that, because in a lot of ways he'll still be essentially doing a lot of the same things. So does anybody have anything that they would like to discuss? Have we received any, before we do that, have we received any alternative nominations for the board of directors? Hearing none. Is there any discussion concerning the current slate of the board of directors? Hearing none. Do I hear a motion to approve this slate of the board of directors as it is presented tonight?
I will move.
Kevin Santoulis moves, and then who? I heard the fellow with the short red hair, Zach seconded. That's Zach Olcom seconded. Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve the slate of the board of directors signify by saying aye. Aye. All those against signify by saying nay. It is the opinion of the chair that the motion carries. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank everyone who volunteered again to be on the board of directors this year. I look forward to working with all of you again this year. Moving on to the second part. Earlier this week, I sent out a message with some PDF documents attached as an email to all MAS members, proposing some changes to the current bylaws that would be needed to address a topic that we discussed at last month's meeting, which would be to merge all of the observing privileges into general memberships and the basic student memberships. And also along with that, we're considering having all the general memberships pay an annual fee of $60 as opposed to the $70 observing level and the $30 regular level. And then the student memberships used to be what, 45 for the observing level, and then Jurgen, can you refresh my memory?
5 plus 40 observing.
Yeah, so for a student membership, it used to be $5 annually, and then the $40 fee on top of that for a total of $45 for student observing. We would like to merge all that into a new $30 level. But to do that, we have to address some old language that exists in the bylaws, starting with the definition I'm showing here for the General Assembly, which is defined as the General Assembly are the members of the society present at any meeting that shall constitute its General Assembly. Each membership shall have one vote at a regular or special meeting of the General Assembly. The membership of the society shall be classified in the following way. And just because in the next part, I'm going to go to the next slide, under the current language for general membership, there's a little bit of language that I find it could potentially confuse people. The current language of general membership says, any person or family who has paid annual dues to the treasurer shall become a general member, having one vote per membership. Now, there's no, in the other other classes of membership, the student membership, the observing membership, skip the observing membership, the lifetime honorary membership, and the lifetime and the patron membership. None of those have any similar language that we have here under general membership, which says having one vote per membership. So I wanted to make it clear in the previous section, the previous heading that is above all of the other below classifications. I wanted to change the word in the last sentence, the membership, to each membership, just to make it very difficult for anyone to misunderstand what the intention there is. And that's in case, say if you have a membership, a single family that has a membership, and you have 3, 4, or 5 people covered in that membership who might be high school age or older. We don't want, and since they have all purchased a single membership together, we don't want the large families like that to outweigh in the votes as far as like each membership being a share of the club to outweigh all of the other memberships. So that language was added into the bylaws. The part in the General Assembly has been there for quite some time, but in 2012, I believe we added the language to this part right here, having one vote per membership under general membership. So does anybody have any questions about that, Jurgen?
Yeah, I think that somewhere in the bylaws it used to be something about at any one address. Because you've got to be careful here. You could have a family that lives in 5 different places is considered to be one family membership. Husband, wife, the kids have all moved out, but so there used to be a reference to at one address.
Yeah, I don't think, if I remember right, I don't remember that language being in the current bylaws, because everything I have in here is on the old language part is an exact copy of what's in the current bylaws.
I think it should be added because that's actually a little bit ambiguous.
Yeah, I would have no objection to that. Would anyone else have any objection to that?
I would only if you don't.
All right. It was very sensible. I thank you. So, yeah, could you?
Right after the word family.
Yeah, could you write that down,
Yeah.
Dan, since I'm not capable of taking notes, because I absolutely do not want to forget Jurgen's suggestion. I think it's very important. So, is there any further question on that topic?
So family at the same address.
Family at the same address, yeah.
So this means that you can only have a family membership for people who are at the same address,
Right.
Perhaps you should say
residing.
So if 4 people at the same address were to decide to individually, say if you're at the same address, like say 4 separate adults who are living in a 5-bedroom apartment thing or a co-op, and those 5 people decided to say that, we're going to buy memberships separately, I think that at the same address, I think the at the same address language would have to be connected to them being a family of some sort, a legal family of some sort, rather than individuals, say, living at a co-op. All right. So the next part is this bigger chunk in yellow I'll cover. All I'm doing with the general membership is adding this block of yellow, which comes directly from the observatory, the current observing membership definition, where I'm going to strike all the bits about paying and observing fees, and then any member who has paid an additional annual fee to the treasurer, then I'm just inserting this shall have the privilege of using the observatory facilities on and on and on. I'm taking all of that language and copying and pasting that into the definition for general membership and the definition of student membership. Does anybody have any questions or want to take a little more time reading those two new definitions, or do you think?
And this is all in the email too, is that right?
Right, it's all in the
If you
email.
want to take some time after the meeting to look at it and make a more informed opinion, you're welcome to do that too.
And then finally, in the proposed change, observing definition, the observing membership, we are proposing to delete that because it would now be obsolete. And then the only change we're making to any other membership, in lifetime honorary membership, it says right now such a membership shall be equivalent to an observing membership, and we're changing that to equivalent to a general membership to be thrown. Yes, Jürgen?
I'm just wondering if we are making lifetime honorary memberships and lifetime, whether we are turning those into family memberships or if they should be individual.
I think that would be up to, since such memberships have to be agreed upon by the majority vote of the General Assembly, that's something that could be addressed in that motion, I think.
I believe right now when we grant an honorary membership, the intent is to grant it to an individual for service to the organization or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, let's leave it as is.
Yeah.
We should actually mention that somewhere in there.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's an obvious way, we have so few of them.
Yeah.
And part of the thing, the intent too, is I don't want to get into detailed of changes because it might take us more time to pass. Since it hasn't been an issue in the recent past,
Yeah.
I don't think it's urgent enough.
Let's
Would be
wait
my
to see.
argument.
A member, that is an individual.
Right. Yeah. A member, yes, that is an individual. So that's a correct reading. If I were a lawyer, a judge, I would agree with your argument right now.
But then you turn around and you have the phrase a general membership, and a general membership is defined as a group of people, possibly a group of
Well,
people.
no, it's defined, a general membership is defined as any person or family. But it's a membership, it's not a member. As far as these terms as far as voting rights and things like that, it considers memberships and not individual members, which goes back to, it goes back to the preamble defining General Assembly. And finally, we're not going to change as far as patron membership. That's not going to change at all. If anyone was ever familiar with patron memberships before or have any questions about it.
I think there were some way back.
Yeah, I don't think we have any.
But I say if we had a company say, hey, come forth and say, hey, we want to give you an endowment for your observatory, you know, a nice chunky endowment for your observatory because this is what our corporation likes doing, then we might want to give that corporation a patron membership.
Yeah. So it looks good to me.
All right, so if there's no further discussion on that, as I said in my email announcement, I formally published these proposed changes this month, and then pursuant to the bylaws, we'll need to address that coming up at the next month's meeting to give everyone a chance to provide their input
So
and
no
be aware of the
motions
meeting.
need- No motion is needed.
No motions needed, I just wanted to have a discussion. Yes, Jürgen?
I just for technicality's sake, the fact that we did modify, add the phrase at one address, does that require anything at all?
I would,
Updated email.
I'll have to update the email as soon as I can. And it's but the thing is such, last minute changes could be done at the June meeting. It's just we're giving everyone advance notice that this is what we have in mind. And that there's going to be an open meeting, that everyone knows with plenty of advance notice that there's going to be this meeting in a month.
Yeah. Now, everybody's had a chance to comment on the specific language, but we've been collecting emails from members who have general comments about the policy change. And so we should just give everyone an opportunity to speak up now if you want to discuss verbally what you think of the proposed membership changes now, before we close out.
Yeah, and which is basically, yeah, summarized there in the heading.
Yeah. Does anybody have any comments?
Yes, Terry?
Is there any thought of letting people online be part of the quorum if we ever go back to, under quarantine again?
Well, we addressed that during the last quarantine, so yeah, there's no reason we can't go to that. As far as tonight's meeting when we're on YouTube instead of Zoom, it's a problem of everyone attending the meeting remotely, being that we have a record that they were there and that they were supposed to be. Otherwise, if somebody say had a beef against this change, one member had a beef against this change and they found a technicality that we didn't follow as far as having a quorum, they could potentially even take us to court and have the court force us to undo the change if we didn't do it according to the rules. Oh, yes, Kevin?
Yeah, just to add to what Dan was asking for here, I just wanted to make a notation that the last meeting this was brought up and we had a very robust attendance, and when it was brought up in the last meeting, it should just be noted that it was pretty much unanimous in the room. Everyone was for this change, and then there was no dissent voiced at all during that meeting.
I do want to add to that. Lawrence and I have received 2 dissents, and we take them very seriously. And so if you do have a differing opinion, we want to hear from you. So this is a time if anyone here wants to speak up. Otherwise, you're welcome to shoot an email.
What's the reason for the dissent?
Yeah, they did. They did. A lot of both members, I don't want to necessarily speak for them now, but I can kind of summarize the general idea is that in both cases, the members aren't really using the resources of YRS and don't necessarily feel that they should be expected to subsidize other members who do use YRS. And I don't necessarily want to take this moment now as a springboard to, describe their position and offer kind of as a straw man.
And unfortunately, especially since they didn't choose to show up at this evening.
No, I don't necessarily, someone can send
They can't speak for themselves.
Yeah, I also don't want to imply that they should come and debate me. That's not what this is about. But I do want to kind of express their ideas in good faith. In both cases, the members aren't using YRS. They might not necessarily be using our other benefits either, like coming to the monthly meetings. And they don't necessarily just see the value proposition of the club to pay that higher fee if they're not getting the benefits. And my response to that is generally that the meetings are free, the Facebook group is free. We really offer a lot for anyone who wants to come in, and if you don't feel like YRS is worth $60 to you, we still welcome you to come to meetings either in person or virtually. We feel like we can accommodate you if you are unable or even unwilling to pay that without really losing any benefits. What's the benefit? The reason we're doing this is the benefit of being a regular member right now is you get a membership card and you get to vote for the board. And we don't even actually give a membership card. You're basically paying $30 into the ether to say that you are a member of the Madison Astronomical Society. And I don't know if that's really a valuable thing to keep doing, because it causes a lot of confusion. We have a lot of people who join who are, you know, kind of sticking their toe in the water and want to join, see what we're all about, but when you stick your toe in, you're always going to do it at the cheapest level. And you end up missing the part about the organization that most renewing members kind of find the most engaging and the most valuable. And so a lot of these new members, we get a lot of new regular members every year. They're in for a year or two, and then they just kind of disappear because they don't know essentially what they're missing. And we want to find ways to pull them into the fold, and we think this is a big way to do it.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And I think another thing, one of the persons that offered a dissenting opinion said, you know, I wouldn't mind if we kept the two-tier system and increased both tiers a little bit, but you know, and this is, you know, would help make things easier and more affordable for people who don't really want to use YRS. However, and I was originally kind of that school of thought, but one of the things we noticed, you know, right now, the way things are right now, is that the regular members can use YRS according to the observatory rules that were approved by the board of directors. That regular members can go use the concrete pads, they can use the electrical outlets and the privies, but they can't use any of the other things. But technically, that provision in the observatory rules goes against the bylaws, which says that, as it says here, any member who has paid the additional annual fee to the treasurer shall have the privilege of using the observing facilities operated by the society. Now, how do we define observing facilities? There is no definition. So you could argue the observing facilities covers the concrete pads, the electrical supplies, and the privy that I was just talking about. Now, if we went down that road, I'm now in a position as a member of the board of directors that I don't want to be in. What happens if a regular member shows up at YRS and puts their pellet telescope on a concrete pad? If we go back strictly to what the bylaw says, if an observing member were to complain in that situation, that puts the board of directors or other members of the club in a position of having to be a police officer or a narc, and you have to be a sergeant of arms, and that at that point is when the club isn't as fun to be in anymore. And that's not what I want to be on the board of directors to do, which is to make other people unhappy by saying you're trespassing or something like that. I don't even want to go there.
That board has been in this position
That test
recently.
is not exclusive. You say if they have paid their fee, you don't say if they haven't paid the additional, you don't say what that means.
Right.
So it could be argued, well, you don't say that I can't be here.
Right.
I haven't paid the fee, but I'm here, you don't say that
Right.
I can't be, so here I am.
So,
I think that potentially could be a problem.
right, I agree. And that's one of the solutions. That's why we came down this road, as it was a potential solution. Yes, Jack?
Yeah, I think that these all are really good points of view, but one of the positive things that's come from this is we're trying to drive our members to YRS. We've made a huge investment in that property, and we're trying to make it easier and lower the barriers to getting there and make it simpler. And I think that's the genius of this. I'm for getting as many people out as observing as we can, and I think this goes a long way to encourage that. So there's a positive to this, I think, that's not just about the levels, it's about access to a terrific resource.
And some of us don't use YRS all that often and still pay the observing fee, and it's because we want to help other people to do these things. It's not all just about what I want to do.
Yeah, I'm speaking here as kind of the membership director, if you will, and I've talked to people. I mean, one thing, I've been a member of the club, I don't know, for 10 years, something like that. And one thing that has really happened is, courtesy of John, we have really had a lot of really good programs here, which are really about general science as opposed to observational astronomy. That's a slightly different direction. I think that's something that draws people who just get the regular member, what used to be called the regular membership. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, from my standpoint and the person who handles the money, it's going to be interesting to see what happens over time
as people who came in only for the general science may drift away from the club because of that extra money. And that's something the board did talk about. But I think this is a wise decision that we're making, and I think it's a good idea.
I just want to jump in here that one of the pieces of feedback I did receive was from a member who joined just for the science programs. I don't know if she's ever even been to an in-person meeting, but she watches them online. She's probably watching now. Hi, Sarah. But she's in it just for the meetings, and her feedback was, go for it. I will never use this benefit because it's not my interest in the organization, but the value that I'm still receiving is very much for $60. She didn't say this, but from my own perspective, I can't take my kids to Chipotle for $60. And what we offer for $60 going forward is a lot.
All right, yeah, and this battery is starting to run out, and this has got to be the last, and I want to have something about the cleanup day to say, yes, you're good?
No, go ahead.
Okay. All right, and to wrap things up quick, I think one announcement, special announcement, we're going to try to schedule a work day out at Yana Research Station coming up. Dave, do you want to have a brief, now that you're officially the observatory director, do you want to have a word about that?
Sure, real brief. So we're sort of debating about the date, but everybody seemed to think that Saturday, Memorial Day weekend would work. Would that work for people here, if you'd be willing to come out? Okay, so, and the second thing real quick is we're going to focus on cleanup, but we'll also have some very straightforward tasks, painting and some brush cleanup and stuff as well once that's finished to help get everything in good shape. And I might send something out by email detailing some of that.
All right, thank you very much, Dave. Yes, Dan?
This is going to be a fun announcement instead of all this, boring membership stuff. On June 8th, we are going to have a very special star party. We haven't sent out an email about this because we're still sorting out the exact times and some of the details. But we are going to be hosting a joint star party at YRS with the Lake County, Illinois Astronomical Society. They have, I don't know all the details, but they're no longer able to use their observing site. And while they have a lot of county parks, one of the things they've used this as an opportunity for is to visit with and socialize with other regional star parties. They visited Joliet and some other Chicago area star parties. And so we're going to have a contingent of them coming up on June 8th. That's Saturday. It's going to be that will be our monthly star party for the new moon. And it looks like we are probably going to have some sort of grill event before then with dinner so we can socialize before it gets dark, meet and greet everybody, see everybody's equipment. We just haven't worked out the exact times yet. I've been kind of the liaison with them on this, and I'm a vegetarian. I don't know how to grill, so I want to find somebody else who can run the grill if that's what we end up doing. If nobody else volunteers, we'll order a bunch of pizzas. You're going to grill? Okay. Okay, you committed. Everybody heard it. It's in the general membership meeting now. It's going to be in the minutes. So mark your calendars for June 8th.
All right, thanks, Dan. Before the battery runs out here, John, do you want to introduce tonight's speaker?
Oh, we got to, we're still in the general membership meeting.
Oh, yeah, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Kevin motions to adjourn? Oh, I think I heard Chris first. Chris Zeltner seconded the motion. All those in favor to adjourn signify by saying aye. Aye. All those against signify by saying nay. The meeting is adjourned.
And the meeting is beginning. Tonight's guest speaker is Brian Champion. Brian is a member of the Starsplitters Club in Wyalusing. Drove 2 hours to be here tonight. That might be the record. Brian was one of those guys who owned a big Meade Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope, and he realized after a few years that those things are heavy, they take a long time to set up and take down, and that basically discourages a lot of observing activities. And so Brian is one of those guys who built his own observatory in his backyard, in your backyard, and that's what he's here to talk to us tonight about. So I'm going to introduce Brian Champion, give him a warm welcome. Brian says go ahead and ask questions throughout, and if you do have a question, raise your hand and I will get around to you with the dying battery. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, John. Good evening, everyone. So we'll start out, how many people here have a backyard observatory? Got one, two? So you know how handy this is then. So I'll start out with some things I don't like about having the observatory. It's a handy place to keep my equipment. Really hate that, you know. My mount's always polar aligned. Geez, I miss polar alignment. You know, everybody enjoys polar alignment, and I really miss that now. Only takes a few minutes. You know, I can go out, roll the roof back. Within inside of 5 minutes, I'm imaging. That's really annoying. You know, you miss all the this doesn't work or that doesn't work or oh, I forgot this cable. And then in the morning, that's the really annoying part. You know, I can just go out a couple minutes, shut the roof, go off to work. You know, no packing up equipment. Kind of miss that. So that's the sarcasm for the for the presentation. So when I first started doing this, as John mentioned, I had a 10-inch Meade. You know, if anybody's had one of these things, an LX200, it's a 65-pound scope. You know, I had that when I was in my 20s. I'm not in my 20s anymore. It's a heavy thing. So I was out of astrophotography for quite some time, and I kind of got involved back when the 2017 Eclipse happened. Kind of renewed my interest in it. I picked up this is a picture of an 8-inch RASA. And I was, this is up at Wyalusing Park. It's about 15 minutes from me. So I would go up there every night that it was clear, set up my equipment, the aforementioned polar alignment and all that. And I would basically sit there underneath the deck lid of my car and watch the sky go by. Which, you know, was good. I enjoyed it. So to preface this, I did not cut down all the trees in my yard just to put up an observatory. About 7 years ago, we had a kind of a severe storm roll through. My neighbor about 2 houses down lost a big tree, took out half their garage. Wasn't long after that, the city had hired an arborist to come around and look at all the different trees, because the city had lost quite a few trees. And he looked at mine, and I had 7 pretty good sized soft maples in my yard, and he'd come in and he looked at them, he says, I would take all these down if I were you. Every one of them was cracked, twisted. 2 of them had lightning strikes down them. One huge one up next to the house half of it was dead up the center. So it didn't take much convincing for that. So me and a couple of my friends, I rented this lift, and I don't know if you've ever been in a 50-foot basket lift, but it's not a lot of fun. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. But so this is what we did. You can see the one here laying in the foreground. It come within about 5 feet of that fence, which is 75 feet from the house. So that's how big that tree was, and it was within 5 feet of the house. So, so we took all the trees down, and then I started setting, instead of going up to the park, I started setting up out in my backyard, which was good. I used Telegizmo covers. Yes?
Brian, you say you rented the basket lift?
Yep.
And you used it yourself?
Yep.
Had you used basket lifts before?
Yep. So yep, the house I live in used to belong to my grandfather. And again, when I was in my late teens, he had 100-foot poplar trees in the backyard. And I rented a lift. Grandpa wanted to take them down, so I rented a lift. That one went to 40 feet. And yeah. So I've done this before.
You've done it before, but you're not professionally trained in it.
I'm not professionally trained at it, and I don't enjoy it that much. But like I said, I set up here in the backyard, and you know, this was pretty good. Like I said, I left a couple mounts sit out. To the keen observer, you'll notice this mount, you can no longer see the white feet on the end of it, because I left it out over winter and it sunk about 3 inches into the ground. Which is pretty handy, by the way, for polar alignment. It always stayed aligned, never had to work with it much. But like I said, I used the Telegizmos covers, cover them up. I'd take the electronics in, I always pulled the camera and I use ASI airs. So I'd always pull those, but the rest of it I'd leave out.
You left the scope on the tripod?
Oh yeah, yep. So I've got a 8-inch RAS and then I got an 11-inch. Incidentally, that 11-inch is no fun to pick up either. That's a 45-pound scope with nothing on it, so yeah. And I do a lot of solar observing as well in photography. I've got 2 scopes on a dovetail splitter there. So it was kind of handy for that. I just go pull the cover and I could go, you know, if the sky was clear, I had a few minutes, go shoot the sun.
The Telegizmo covers hold up for you?
Great.
Oh, they did, really?
Yep. So I have,
Everything else, huh?
yep, I have 2 of them. I have one that would cover my 11-inch and one that would cover the 8. And then I also got the tripod cover. So basically you pull them together and it's a pretty secure setup. So I had an idea as I went through this and kept setting up. Did you have a question? Oh. As I kept setting up in the backyard, I come up with this idea that, you know, it'd be pretty cool to have a roll-off roof observatory in my backyard. And I kind of mulled this around for probably almost a year. Kind of looking at different designs, and I started looking at them, kind of deciding what the things I didn't like about them. There was one version I seen, I think it was Skyshed had plans for one that used the garage door wheels and tracks. I looked at that, and in my many younger years, I put up overhead doors for a living, so I knew what garage door rollers were all about, and I really didn't want that. I looked at like regular, like observing domes. Seemed really complex to me, you know, just like the tracking of the dome and all that. You know, and I wanted something simple. So I come up with this idea. I started playing around with it. The hardest part I had trying to figure out was how big do you make it, right? I didn't want, you know, I mean, I could have built a 20 by 30 shed out in the backyard. Wasn't really what I wanted. I wanted something fairly small, but I can tell you from experience now that I would build it bigger. You know, you can always use more room, right? So this deck is 6 foot by 8 foot. And initially in the plan, I was going to have the pier in the center of it. And I got to looking at it, I played around here with my humanoid model, and I drew up a model for a tripod, for the Skywatcher tripod I have. And I realized that if I just put that off center, I could set the tripod in there as well. I was going to set a second pier, but I kind of decided that I wasn't 100% sure on this, so I didn't take the time to dig a second pier in. But like I said, I figured that I could get this in there. And worst case scenario, what I generally do, like on something like this, is I have a ratchet strap that's anchored to the floor, just so it doesn't move. But what I have found is, you know, just me moving around inside of here, it'll move the scope a fair amount, a lot more than what you think. The other thing I didn't want was, I'm sure you've seen some roll-off roof designs where they have a set of posts out here that hold up the track. Didn't want that. Don't like mowing around stuff. So I come up with this idea for basically a cantilevered roof like this. The roller for the roof is just past center on this side. So I only needed, so like I said, this is 6 foot wide. So this track is 10 feet long. I kept the roof as light as I possibly could. You know, just a roof, doesn't have to do much. Built the deck fairly heavy, and the pier is set in between the gap here. So then we started. My helper dog here. So I started, a friend of mine had some scrap 5-inch pipe, so we welded it together, and that My pier pole is about 9 feet long. There's about 5 foot of it buried in the ground. We poured cement in around it, and I ended up filling the pole as well with concrete. I live about 1.5 miles from train tracks, and when the ground is real dry, you know, I can see every wheel hit a joint in that track. It's pretty crazy. But filling the pole with concrete helped quite a bit. Took out a lot of the vibrations. So I took and I got a pipe flange out of McMaster car, and I machined up a aluminum adapter for my Skywatcher mount, and then to bolt to the top of that. And I set it up with basically just threaded rods so I could adjust the level on it. And I left them long because I wasn't exactly sure at this point just how high that mount was really going to be inside the building when I got done with it. And I was glad I did, because I ended up running it up a little higher. But of course, you know, like everybody, I no more than got the concrete set, dried, and I had to put a scope on it and start using it, right? So that's what that one's all about.
Did you have any problem with the verticality of it shifting just a little bit as the concrete dried?
Nope, I didn't have any issues at all. Like we drove the pipe into the ground about 1.5 feet in the bottom of the hole, and then poured the concrete into it. So.
Did you add the core concrete later?
Yep. Yeah, after the aforementioned train vibration. So then we started with the deck. I built the deck in the afternoon. I went out and went to my local Menards, and I picked up everything I needed there. So my building is not set in the ground. It sits on these concrete blocks, and then I got these, they were plastic, they were designed for like a 4-inch post. So there's just little short stub posts in there that I use to level the deck to the ground. So where I live in Prairie du Chien, it's all sand. There's no clay, there's no nothing there. So we don't see any frost heaving or anything like that. So I started putting all the pieces together in my garage. I went right off my plans, cut everything, started screwing all the pieces together, built my little roof trusses. Then, of course, when I did this, it was pouring rain for about 1.5 weeks. So it sat there in the garage and car sat out. Then we finally got some clear skies, and we was able to start putting it together. So I built it as modularly as I could. So basically, it was just stand the walls together, run some long screws in, and my dad helped me with this, and we did this in an afternoon. So these are the rails that I ended up using. These are 4 by 1.5 inch C-channel. They're steel. Once we started building the roof, it's one thing to design something, it's another thing to build it. So I was really tossed about how to build the roof, right? Do I build it on the ground and try to pick it up and put it on there? Or do I build it in place? So I opted for building it in place. And what you see here are inline skate wheels. I found inline skate wheels that would just fit inside that 4-inch C-channel. And I wanted it so that, the roof couldn't tip off of it or anything like that. So that was the reason for the C-channel. So I decided to build it in place, and I ended up putting little shims behind the wheels here. Then I just clamped it right to the track. And I put the little truss on it. Once we had the 2 end trusses in, I basically just cross measured it, made sure it was square. I left about a 1/2 inch gap between. As it turns out, I wish I'd have left less. But so then we put put the 3 trusses in, all the stringers between it, put the tin on it, and I had a roof I could move.
Did you have any trouble with the wheels in sub-zero temperature?
I have not. Again, the roof is pretty light. I don't think the roof weighs 200 pounds. I mean, it's fairly light. I did notice that the wheels do have flat spots on them, which It's kind of handy because I can just roll it closed and it just rolls right to the spot and there it sits. So it works out kind of good that way. But yeah, I made them so they're easy enough to change that should I have to, they're easy to get out, yes.
I don't do inline skating, so I'm curious, what sort of wheels are they, metal, plastic? Rubber?
They're like a real hard urethane. I think they're like 90 durometer. I tried several different ones. I found some that were like super soft and I didn't want that. So I stayed with the harder ones.
Did you consider doing more than 2 on each side?
So I left that option. I wasn't sure exactly how much I was going to need. I was worried that, when I got it rolled all the way out, that if it tipped, what was I going to do about that? But as it turned out, it's more than enough for this. The way I did this, I'll show a close-up of the wheel assembly here. So these wheels sit on a shoulder bolt, and the shoulder bolt is then a precision fit into that aluminum plate. So it's not resting on the threads at all. It's resting on a hardened bolt.
So your wheels aren't actually all the way to the end of the truss. Is that just to keep your track shorter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And the balance is fine?
Yep.
It's not shaky?
Nope.
Yeah, you said you regretted the half-inch gap. Is that because you're getting some weather through there?
So I've got overhang all the way around. I just wish I had kept it a little closer, because now I got to figure out how to seal up that half-inch gap.
Oh, okay.
I've looked at brushes, I've looked at like felt, I've looked at several different things and I haven't really found anything that I thought is going to work well.
Are you getting bugs coming in through that gap?
I haven't had any issues. I've been waiting for the bees, the spring is here now, so I'm waiting for the bees, but,
Oh, this is your first year?
yep.
All the critters are yet a research.
Yeah, up at Wyalusing, there's a lot of them up there, wow.
There's nothing worse than,
Solutions for that too, yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to deal with,
we like trying to keep the mice out too.
yeah.
And the hornets.
So then I was a little tossed as to what I wanted to do for the outside of the building. The tin is good, it's quick, it's easy to put up. But my house has got cedar siding on it and or cedar sheeting on it. So I kind of decided I wanted to stay with that. So I got cedar sheeting for it. Most expensive part of the whole thing was that. So we put the sheeting on. I left room for a couple windows in there because I figured I'd need a little bit of ventilation. You can see it here, I've got it folded down. So this is my south-facing wall. I made the top foot of that to where it would fall down, or where it would fold down. I wasn't 100% sure, but I tried several different spots in my yard to decide where exactly I wanted this. And I knew I would be close for the Lagoon Nebula without that fold down part. So I thought, well, might as well just do it, right? Then it's there. And as it turns out, it's good I did it because I can just catch the Lagoon Nebula now. So here's a little close up of the wheels.
Also, they're paired wheels.
Yep, there's two.
I have a question about the height. Do you have to park your scope to close the roof?
You'll see a picture of that here coming up. Yeah. So I'm short, right? So I made the door to where it would basically just clear my head. Door's about 6 foot. Everything in there is fairly short, so no tall people. At least if you do, you're going to be ducking.
It's a Frank Lloyd Wright house.
Yep, made for me. So like I said, these are hardened shoulder bolts, 8mm diameter. That was the bearing diameter in the wheels. Then I bought a reamer and I reamed them to fit the aluminum plate. So the aluminum plate then it's got carriage bolts up that bolt to this, and then I ran leg screws up through the bottom of it. There's a picture of me with the roof back and the south wall down. So that's the height of my Skywatcher mount without a scope on it.
So do you sweep the leeward side of the roof of snow before you rack it over?
Yep. So I got to experience that this year. So that was a trip to the hardware store to get an extension for a snow rake, and it comes off pretty easy. it wasn't too bad. I had looked at putting heat tape up next to the tin, but I was a little more concerned then it would ice, you know, I'd have more problem with ice and not be able to melt all the snow, and so I just went and got a roof rake, and it takes just a couple minutes to rake it off, and then I'm done with it. So you mentioned the snow. So one thing I did discover about this, and I thought about it in the design phase of it. I didn't really think it would be that big of a thing, but like in the morning with the dew, it'll drip on you. Yep. So that I seen what another person had done was they took a piece of PCV pipe and they cut a slot in it and then just put it up over the edge of the tin. That may be the route I go for that.
Are you battery operated out there, or do you run?
Nope, I dug you can, yeah, you can't see it there, but I ran in just 110 volt power and Ethernet. Yep, I don't trust wireless anything. I've got two ASIers, and you get them anywhere close proximity and neither work, so they always work on wired. So here's what it looks like to have two scopes sit in there.
It's a little cozy.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's bad when you have them pointing opposite. So if you're looking at something to the west and something to the east, then it's a problem. But this one, the one on my Skywatcher mount, oddly enough, I use probably the most around my AM5. That's my main imaging rig, and I use that one probably the most at night. The other setup, right, currently I have one of my solar scopes setting on it, and I use that one for solar observation and imaging. It's worked out well to just leave it set up like that. There have been nights where I'll swap out the solar scope and set another rig on there. Just depends on what's available to shoot and what I'm interested in.
I'm curious, so you have one on the mount and the other one is on just on a tripod.
Yep.
And just moving around in there, what does that do? Or when you're doing photography, do you have to kind of park yourself?
Well, anytime I'm imaging, I'm usually in the house. Yep. Like I said, the only time I really am out there much for solar is when I'm doing solar. And then, like I said, that's the one that's on the pier, so it doesn't matter. If there's like the big sunspot that's going on now, I'll throw a solar scope on that one too and just deal with moving around. But it's funny, so you see my dogs, and even their weight will move that. It's enough, especially you get a long focal length on there looking at the sun, just their weight alone is enough that it'll move. So.
Well, you're talking about the one on the pier?
No, the one on the
Okay,
tripod.
I was going to say, I should think
Yep.
the one on the pier would be fine.
Yep, pier is isolated from the building, so, yep, yeah.
One comment from online says you need some flower boxes on your.
So they must have looked at the Sky Shed plans. They show one that has two little flower boxes by the windows, and
Have you considered cutting a hole in your floor and digging another pier?
I have. The way the beams are laid out for the deck, I have a place to do it. It's just a matter of taking out some screws and, yeah.
It'd be kind of unpleasant trying to use a post hole digger on the deck, but.
Yeah. A friend of mine's got a power auger for that, so. And like I said, where I'm at is all sand. It digs pretty easy. Yeah, there's no rocks or anything, so.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were lucky enough to have sandy soil there, but I would think that if someone else was putting it up on someplace that had a lot of clay or things like that,
Yep.
you might have to put footers on the corners
Yep.
of the shed. So.
Yep. So like I said, where I'm at is in Prairie du Chien. It's all sand down there. Up on the bluff, 600-foot elevation from where I'm at. It's all clay and flat rock up there. So here it was completed. You can see a little bit of snow on the ground there. I finished up kind of late. I got all the windows in. I got the skirting over the wheels. And like I said, this is made so it can come off if I do need to replace a wheel or have any issues with it. So yeah, this was completed and didn't have the power all dug in yet, so there's an Ethernet cable laying on the ground. But yeah, now one of the biggest concerns I have now is weeds. I'm going to put in some edging around here and fill that in with rocks so I don't have to weed eat around it. But yeah.
I want to make one comment about the track, the rails.
Sure.
And I say this because I ran into this problem out at YRS. We have a beam that goes out when you take the top of the DVR pull back. And I was out there one day just looking around, and I turned around, I'm about 6 feet tall, I turned around and I nailed myself right in the eye with the corner of it. So my suggestion is you might want to put on the end of that something soft, that if somebody does hit it, they don't kill themselves. Just in case Jurgen comes and visits.
So just as a reference, so these are about 10 inches with another inch and a half of decking on top of it. And that's 6 foot to the bottom of that, so it's a little over 7 foot. Yep, it looks shorter than it really is. Yep.
Still, if you have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I shovel a little path out to it in the winter, so, yeah.
We ended up putting fencing around that for our student, we're calling it the Jurgen fencing.
Something shorter people don't think about too much. Yes.
Brian, what's happened to your productivity?
You know, if you watch your Facebook page, you see I post a lot, especially solar. I'm not too interested in galaxy season, so that's why I haven't been really doing much astro. But yeah, I mean it's just so much handier. You know, like I said, I don't have to polar line, I don't have to drag the gear out, I don't have to do anything. The only thing I wish I had done was I made it 8 foot square instead of 6 by 8, just for the fact I'd have more place to put more scopes and have them handy out there. That way they're down to temperature and you know you're ready to go at a moment's notice. Yes.
Just pick your location in your yard based on where all the neighbors' trees are?
Yes. So I set up my rigs out here and this way. I had tried different places for different things. So what's not really shown here is this is the east wall. This is south. So I'm about a mile or so from that bluff I just mentioned, 600-foot bluff. So usually by the time things come up over that bluff in the east, they're pretty much out of the atmosphere for me, so that worked out okay. But to the north and to the west, I've got all these other trees around here, so shooting to the west becomes a real problem, especially like early morning. But yeah, that seemed to be, you know, every time it was just one of those, I kind of watched my own patterns, right? Wherever I was setting my scope up the most was here. Because it'd be, you know, I'd want to shoot one thing or another, and I knew I could get it from there, and so it just got to be the common place, and that's where I decided to put the building.
But with the drop in the wall on the south side, you maximize the galactic core for yourself.
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
There's a cemetery about a quarter mile south of me that has some super tall pine trees that make that really challenging. Yes.
How good is the wind protection inside there?
It's actually pretty good. So I most recently I had to put a latch on the door because the wind caught the door and whipped it open and shook the whole building. So I didn't really care for that too much. So I put an inside latch on it so I can keep the door shut. And what I found is that, especially like for solar, I can roll the roof just partially open once I get the scope up and pointed toward the sun. And that makes a good sunshade and a good wind block. And somebody else had another question over here?
I had a question,
Yes.
but I kind of thought it out, but now I have a different one. So when you open that partially, how do you block it in place so that it doesn't blow?
The aforementioned flat spots in the wheels. You just find the right spot and clink and it just sits there. Yep.
And that's good enough.
Yep.
Unless it's really windy.
Well, if it's really windy, I'm probably not going to be out there. I don't think I have any pictures of it, but on the,
Latch to keep the roof in place when you're
yes.
taking people on vacation?
So what I did was on the inside of the roof, I used so I have a couple different methods for doing it. I have 4 turnbuckles, like if I'm going to leave for an extended period of time or something, I can anchor securely. But the most common thing I use, I just put a deadbolt that will just keep the roof shut. It's just a vertical deadbolt. And then when I open it all the way, I have another spot that deadbolt will go into, and it'll keep it from, because the worst thing that could happen is a gust of wind, try to shut that thing at night, you know, scope, because the scope is always up above the roof line, so that'd be bad. So here's the aforementioned sunshade. This, like I said, this works out pretty good. Gives me a spot I don't have to stand out in the sun, and makes it easier to see my computer. So here's some of the extra shots. Another dog. This is my dad. He was one that helped me with this quite a bit. Here's 2 scopes. So I have that's my Skywatcher 100mm, and then that's my 8-inch Celestron with my Coronado Etalons on it. I put a security camera out there so I could see what was going on when I'm in the house. That happened to be a shot of a meridian flip. I'd never actually seen a meridian flip, so that was kind of interesting. One of the things I never pay attention to. I'm usually in bed. Here's one of the turnbuckles I use for holding, the more secure method for holding it down. So here's my look north. So one of the questions I got quite a bit was, why did you put the roof line that way? And this is the primary reason. So for me, Polaris is about up in here. And I wanted the highest point of the roof as far away from the scope as I could get it. And I was concerned that if I ran the peak the other way, that I'd have this peak right here, right up close to me, and I'd have a hard time seeing around it. So that was the primary reason to run the roof line that way, which, like I said, then, of course, run into the problem with the water drip, but it's fairly minor. So here's what the south wall looks like, where the fold down is, just some hinges and deadbolts up at the top. So this is the next one I'm working on. This is for up at the park at Wyalusing. So currently they have a dome. It's right about 30 years old, and you know what 30-year-old fiberglass looks like. And it's been really difficult. We'd like to use it more. We do a lot of public outreach, so we'd like to be able to use that more. But the problem is, in order to get in the dome, where the opening is, they had to put a bridge across there because it tried to pull itself apart, and it makes it really hard to get people in and out of it. We have to use this stepladder thing, and we just didn't feel it was safe to try to get the general public in and out of it. So after I finished mine, there was some talk about it. You know, what if we built something like this, only bigger? So this one is 12 foot by 12 foot. A little bit bigger design. We have a Paramount in there with a 16-inch scope on it right now. And the idea is that, you know, it's big enough that we could probably set a couple other smaller scopes in there as well, you know, be able to use it that way.
But you decided to reverse the peak on the roof?
Just because of the span.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yep, and this one's taller. So this one is about 7 foot to the bottom of the roof. Because of
Planning for those joists to be open at the top, underneath the roof? Or are you going to cover that?
on the inside?
Or is there going to be something to keep the wasp out and things like
Yeah, that's one thing I've been kind of experimenting on mine to try to figure out what is the best way to close up a moving roof, right? I've looked, you know, the marvels of YouTube, right? I've looked at a lot of different ideas. Brushes seem to be probably the most common thing for closing these up. The most compliant thing anyways, that's easy to move. And that'll probably be the method I end up with on this one too. And there's some of the different things I've shot from in there. Yeah.
So if you don't mind, the crass question is, what were your costs all in?
Sure. So, interesting story. I'll back it up a bit. So, a couple friends of mine, we have a sawmill that we saw logs on, turn them into boards or lumber. So, the majority of the lumber for the building itself, we sawed all that. There was, in that windstorm that I had mentioned earlier, our local golf course lost like 15 giant pine trees. So we were able to get those logs and we sawed them up, and that was what I built the building out of. So that was a lot more of a process than you might think. You know, we rough sawed it, and then we built a solar kiln for drying the wood. So we took a year and dried the wood down, and then so I do woodworking as well. So I have a thickness planer and a shaper, and I was able to use that to get all the wood down to normal dimensional size. So that was all into it for what I have there. I was into it about $3,200. Yes.
Do you need a permit?
No. So it's not attached to the ground. It sits on the ground. It's basically like a garden shed. So that's how they're. So that was one of the primary reasons I didn't set posts in the ground for it, right?
Even for running the electrical?
Yeah. That's made so I can disconnect right off the top and.
Oh, so you don't have a hard connection to like a sub panel or something?
No. No. I tried to make it not permanent, I guess is the best way to put that. Yep. I had cords running out there originally, and I didn't really like that because then every time you mow, you got to pick up the cord or you forget and make sparks. And so yeah, I buried a conduit, and then at the top of it, it's quick disconnect. So yeah, yes.
Plans for the next round of improvements? I've seen some people do like flat panels and things like that.
So again, other than my solar, I don't really do much out there. Like I said, I use ASI Airs currently. I'm looking to switch to a mini PC now, but most everything I do is from my iPad in the house. You know, I go out, I get the scope, I get it up, turn everything on, I go in the house. I have my little security camera, I can see what's going on out there, and that's, it's almost remote observing. But yeah, it's, you know, the one thing I've really learned about it, the big eye-opener to the whole thing was how much more I do it now. I was telling John earlier, you know, if I look at the sky map and I see that, you know, maybe I'm going to have 3 or 4 hours of good sky, it's just minutes to go out and open the roof and do it. Whereas before, you know, if it was, you know, throw all the rig in the car and drag it up to Wyalusing, or even here in the yard, set it up, polar line it, do all this other stuff, I'm not going to do it. Not long enough. Now, yeah, I'll go out and image for 4 hours.
What about like some sort of automated, you know, it rolls the roof off at 2 o'clock after the cloud?
So I'm looking into that. What I'm most concerned about, the Skywatcher mount, I know I can set a different different park position. The AM5, I'm not 100% sure I can do that. I've read articles either way on it. So basically, what I've read on it says you're basically fooling it to a different home position. And I'm not set up to where I could close the roof with them up. So that's the holdback now. When I get that part figured out, then I'll probably put like a garage door opener on it to open and close it. Yes.
How nicely does the structure play with the wind?
So like I said, I mentioned earlier about the door slamming. Once I solved that with just a simple deadbolt on the inside, I don't really notice any problems with the wind. Like I said, I do have 4 turnbuckles on the inside. I can secure the roof if I need to, but I haven't. When I left for the Eclipse here a while back, I anchored it because I didn't know what would happen, you know, while I was gone. So I just went ahead and screwed the roof down. But normally I just use the deadbolt and it's fine.
Are there any more? Oh, yeah, there are a couple more questions.
Sorry.
I have 2 questions, Brian.
Sure.
The first one has to do with you choosing the C channel over the garage track.
Sure.
What were the points negative about the garage track? Because I know a lot of other people.
Yep. So my big concern with it was, one, being out in the weather. I was, like I said, I put up garage doors for almost 15 years, so I know what happens to them when they're exposed to elements.
So they corrode and so on?
especially the rollers. I did a lot of garage doors and car washes, and I can tell you how many times I had to go back. They are not, those open bearings and that, they are not made for that environment. That and it was mainly the big thing behind it was a strength thing, right? Because I wanted to cantilever it out of there with no support. And that,
And the C channel was strong.
yeah, yeah. When we put it on there, I hung on it. I got a friend of mine to hang on it. You know, yeah, this isn't going anywhere. So, yeah.
Yeah. My second question is about the longevity of the scopes out in temperature and humidity changes year-round. Have you noticed any deterioration, any mold accumulation?
Nope. So I have the windows on there. I keep them cracked open a little bit just for ventilation.
A little extra ventilation.
Yep. And currently I'm looking to get, I found like they're like little 4-inch fans with solar panels on them. And I'm looking at putting those up in the gables just to keep the heat out of there.
So it is a concern.
It is a concern.
It just hasn't caused any problem yet.
Yep. This last weekend I went out and I put 3/4 foam board insulation up next to the tin. Because what I would see was, like a really damp morning, I'd see a little bit of condensation on the inside.
Oh, so it might drip on the scope.
And that was my primary concern with that, is I didn't want it dripping on, I don't want to have rain forced in my building. So I put some insulation in there. I may go ahead and put that 3/4 foam board all around inside the building. Like I said, I used it this last winter and I didn't really have any issues at all. I mean, it's ambient temperature out there. So, but the nice part about that was, I didn't see any frost on the scopes or anything like that.
Yeah. You say you put the foam all over in the building? Or
Nope, just in the roof right now.
Okay.
But I'm thinking about doing the rest of the building. And if I have to, I could put a small heater out there, just something real simple. Yes?
I'm just curious how it actually gets in there on a nice sunny day and you're gonna get clear skies at night. How long does it take after you open the roof for the thermal equilibrium?
So I try to give it a couple hours, if at all possible.
So it's a little bit longer than if you had to set it up yourself.
Yep. But the nice part about it is I can go open the roof, go have supper, do whatever, and yeah.
That
So,
might be shorter if you get fan ventilation.
yep,
And still compared to if you're keeping your gear inside at a certain temperature.
right. So I made that mistake, keeping the gear in the air-conditioned house and drag it out on a hot night. That's a really bad idea. It's one of the things you don't think about, right? You just grab the scope, went out, what is going on? So, yeah. So it is a lot nicer to keep it out there. I've got another addition on my garage that is insulated and all that and kept dry, so I can keep scopes there if I have to.
How many scopes do you want to be able to put in there ultimately?
How many do I have, or how many do I want to put in there? So I like to keep my solar scope out there, and I like to keep at least one of my imaging rigs out there that I can swap on the Skywatcher mount. Once.
Talking about adding maybe a third scope if you build a second.
Well, what wasn't shown in that picture is I do have another a Celestron mount sitting outside the building that I have another scope sitting on. So yeah, there's no more room inside there to add another. It's like a gymnastics act to move around in there now, especially with a long scope. So I've got an Explorer Scientific AR-152 I use for solar as well, and that was the scope I used to set the circle that I was going to need, right? What I didn't include in that circle was me. So, if the scope happens to be pointed toward the corner, I can get around it. If it's up next to a wall, then I got to duck under it. So, again, there's all these learning lessons you figure out as you do it, right? You see it in the drawing, oh, that'll work fine. And then in reality, oh, geez, it's in the way. But yeah, like with the shorter scopes, especially on the tripod that's sitting there, that my other scope's just a 90mm scope, so it's fairly short. Works real well. And it was real handy that I had it on the tripod and hadn't dug a pier in, because I had to put the pier in the wrong spot for sure. Because when I set the tripod in there, I put the scope on, never even thought too much about it. Come back out the next morning, and it's got itself jammed up against the the windowsill. Went to do a meridian flip and jammed itself, and I'm like, all right. So I had to move over about 6 inches so I had room, and so that was the handy part about having that on a tripod. At least it was easy to solve that. The one on the pier, I haven't had any issues with that. Like I said, I set it up with my 152, so I knew I would have clearance around it at least. The scope is, other than me being in there, the scope is clear to move anywhere it wants to move in there, so that works out okay.
Everything in there is permanent. Do you have any storage space in there at all?
Well, I didn't show it, but my 152 is sitting in the corner. I have an 8-inch sitting there in the corner, so I use the corners.
All right, any more questions for Brian?
I don't have a question for Brian, but I wanted to let all of our members and viewers know that the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center has just upgraded the current storm to G5 Extreme. G5 Extreme, they are expecting disruptions in GPS and possibly a utility voltage measuring equipment on power lines, so there might be power outages. Go out tonight and watch the Northern Lights. We're probably not going to see anything like this for a long time.
Yeah, and you may want to disconnect some of the breakers to your laser points.
Yeah, don't touch,
Unplug your TVs.
don't go anywhere any electric fences or anything like that. Well, I just like to quick say before my battery dies that Brian, yeah, we're really lucky to have you as a member here, and I'd like to thank you for being a member of Madison Astronomical Society, as well as being a member of that great group out at Wyalusing. So I really appreciate your presentation, and I imagine a lot of our members are probably going to try to get in touch with you with some questions, including the board of directors when we consider some projects out at YRS.
I've been asked about plans for it. I don't have like formal plans for it. I mean, I worked off my 3D drawing, because it was just easy to work off my iPad and do it that way. But I have been asked quite a bit about it, so I may take time and make up actual drawings and then building plan and all that kind of stuff. So.
We also greatly appreciate the daily solar updates.
Well, when the sun's shining.
To members or viewers who are not on our Facebook group, almost every day, Brian posts these absolutely jaw-dropping photographs of the sun. You can see some in the picture up there, but that's not zoomed in. He just posts amazing things. Join our Facebook group and look at these, because he is just doing incredible stuff. And I would actually like a whole presentation just about your solar rig sometime if you can.
John mentioned that, so.
I agree. And
this image here is the sunspot that we are talking about. This was when it first started out.
so, yeah, I guess this concludes, thanks to Brian for being here, and this concludes this month's meeting of the Madison Astronomical Society. First, I'd like to quick apologize to everyone at home. We didn't get a chance to mic people's questions because the supply of batteries I thought we had in the back room is a box full of dead batteries. So I apologize for that. But I also would like to thank every individual person who came to the meeting here at Space Place tonight, because we had very important club business to do, and everyone here helped us achieve a quorum and move forward with the board for the next year. So thanks to everyone for making the effort to come out here tonight. And we'll see you next month on June 14th, Friday, June 14th. Good night, everyone.